And welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Citizen Live at 9. It's time for Opinion Court, and as promised earlier, a section of our audience is with us here in studio tonight, and we'll be discussing the prevailing current affairs topics very shortly. Edward Kisiangani is our resident political analyst. He joins us alongside lawyers, educationists, rights activists, political actors of various forms, entrepreneurs, and just everyday people who want their voices heard, as obviously, the stake and the state of the country does rest with you and me. So you're all welcome to the program. Thank you so much for coming. Prof, I want to start with you as always, and let's start by listening to what President Kenyatta had to say earlier today.
Political debate. Nakwambia siku hizi hata mimi nimechoka kuangalia TV. Ni ya nini? Hata kusoma gazeti. Kila saa, kila siasa. Sijui mtu anajiita analyst. Kama ulikuwa hii analyst hii kila siku. Na siasa una analyze nini? Si tumechoka jamani.
Never mind that Prof is our resident analyst here. But, he does make a point. There are a lot of people who feel exhausted by this, political talk, political process, etc. Has time come for Kenyans to move on to another subject, do you think?
I think that, let's just about the president. I don't think he did it with a light touch, and he has a right to say that, but the bottom line is that he listens, because it means we have been irritating him enough. So he does listen, and Mr. President, I would tell him, I think he has a right to complain, but I think he swore to protect the Constitution. He knows what Article 33 and 34 of the Constitution says, so I think he will protect that Constitution, the right to free expression and the right for media. So I think they don't read too much from the president.
And the right for Prof to show up here every Thursday.
And we shall keep irritating our president until he does what he wants, what we want.
Okay, fair enough. I want to kick us off with the question of the political dilemma. Prof, here we are with a president-elect who awaits swearing in a couple of days. Millions are unhappy. A section of them is saying things like, not my president. There is even concern that something drastic could happen on Tuesday, counter to the inauguration. Are you concerned about this, and is there any way to climb down from the very hard positions?
And every Kenyan should be concerned with what has been happening. And our concern, especially within the media, has been that we need a dialogue over a couple of issues. After the Supreme Court ruling on Monday, I think a number of things have happened. Probably we have closed the legal part of the election. What remains now is the political part. The Supreme Court, by its own ruling, has already legitimized Jubilee to take power. So Jubilee is going to take power. President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to be our president for the next 5 years. The easier part has been done. The bigger challenge begins, and this is where we shall irritate our president, because we need now to find out what he is going to do to make sure that things happen. Remember, just before the election, we tried to get the political combatants to discuss a number of things, to sit down and streamline a number of things so that we have a better country. Even if there is a contested election, we didn't quite succeed as citizens. Now that the president is going to be President Kenyatta, I think he needs to look at the issues that have been, recurring on the political debate, including the issue of exclusion versus inclusion, including the issue, the dilemma of how to form government. How is he going to form government to satisfy everybody? There are issues of corruption, and they are also related with the question of political exclusion and inclusion. These things have even given rise to the debate about secession. And at that point, the president is no longer the president of Jubilee. He's the president of the Republic. So we expect him probably to provide leadership, but to assume that President Kenyatta alone has a solution to what is happening is wrong. We as citizens have a duty under the Constitution to engage in a narrative and a discourse that can give direction to this country. This country belongs to all of us.
Right.
So we hope he has a solution. He has a proposal about this political dilemma, the discrimination that has been alleged, the issue of corruption, how to move the country to the next level, because we have not even been attending to economic issues. So he's right to talk about politics, and we need to sort out our country. But also to embrace the group that has been opposing him. I don't think time is with us, and chest thumping will not help. So we are looking to Jubilee to give us direction, but as citizens we want in our little way in this opinion court to make a contribution, and hopefully we shall not irritate the president or his...
After you've said twice.
Yes, but we hope, and we shall give some ideas that will be picked by our president, and hopefully they will become part of his speech on Tuesday. Hopefully.
Yes. All right. So I want to open it up now to the rest of my audience. You know, there is concern that Tuesday's swearing in could be disrupted perhaps in some form. We heard the government spokesman talk about that today. And it's a catch-22 situation for the government, because there has been a lot of condemnation in the manner in which the government has dealt with protests previously, some feeling it has been too heavy-handed, etc. It's catch-22. Any thoughts on this, and what can the government do? This is a big day. There'll be, you know, heads of state from all over, and, you know, there's concern about what will happen. Anyway?
Before I start, maybe I can speak about what Professor said.
Very briefly.
Yes, about the president. I think what the president says is that he doesn't want high drama. What he wants is that he knows that the people that voted for him, they didn't vote for him because they wanted a president. They voted for him because they knew that the enormity of the task ahead. That's why they chose to elect him. So he doesn't want to be drawn into high drama. Kenyans want high drama. He doesn't want that. He knows that by the end of the day, at the end of the 5 years, is that people will judge him, and historians will judge him, whether he was married, whether he was married to the agenda of this country.
And that's a fair point, and we'll talk about it later when we discuss legacy. To my question now.
To your question, on Tuesday, the swearing in of the president, there is a political divide. NASA will want to do their own things, but the fact of the matter is, number one is that whatever NASA will want to do, whether they want to swear in their presupposed president, is illegal, is spurious, is illegitimate, it's a fallacy, it cannot happen, and the government will try to make sure that it does not go ahead. How it is going to do that, whether they're going to use the police, whether it's going to use its machinery, its agents, it's upon them. But what I think is that whatever NASA wants to proceed with on Tuesday is illegitimate. It cannot
but you don't know yet what they want to proceed with. I think we're going to get direction from them. But the government spokesman today just made a kind of blanket statement. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I just generally have there's something Prof just mentioned, and he said that we look to see what kind of leadership and guidance Jubilee would give. My genuine concern that I have in this country is we have separated it into tiers, right? The first tier is a political leadership, right? The second tier is us citizens who are the minions, and that even includes the business people, the average SME and entrepreneur. Now, I generally believe, and I mentioned this on another radio show that I was on, that I think it's genuinely time that we the people set the agenda. So when the politicians are coming to us, they're not telling us what they're going to do for us. We tell them, hey, you know what? Our priority right here is roads. Our priority here is jobs. I was in Kisumu about 2 weeks ago, and it was just interesting passing the Kikomi gate, looking at that's a failed cotton industry. We have the sugar belt in dire straits. So it's not about the pandering of an event. Yes, the president's going to be sworn in. He's our president. Americans voted for Trump, some didn't. He's still their president. They may not like him. He abuses people on Twitter. tough. He's your president, whether you like it or not. Now, the question is, with this president, how can you work with him to establish systems that actually work? That's what we should be focused on as people, as the citizens of Kenya, not the political pandering and the theatrics that they use to distract us. We need to open our eyes and say, okay, fine, in my immediate neighborhood, what is the problem? A lot of us do not have proper sewage systems, yet you pay Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company for sewage fees, right? Why do I have people's defecation spewing on my streets? We don't have roads. That's not a political promise. As government, you are required to do it. So I think it's time to focus more as we the people in this room and within your homes, within your neighborhoods, those nyumba kumis. How about sit down with your neighbors and see, okay, how can we start championing things? The president's working at a national level, and yes, the national government does contribute in essence to the county government. Right. But you the people within your nyumba kumi in your estate, what are you doing collectively to go and challenge your legislative representative to do something credible?
Fair point. Macharia Gatho.
The president has the option to tune into Cartoon Network or anything else he feels like he wants to watch. I find it very interesting that it is politicians, active politicians, who are forever telling other people not to discuss politics. What is it that is so sweet in politics they want to reserve for themselves? There must be something there that they want to keep exclusively to themselves. But on a more serious note, we are seeing a level of intolerance even before he is sworn in. He doesn't want people to discuss politics. Or rather, he doesn't want politics that is not favorable to his point of view. Because I know Kameme FM is forever on politics. I don't know, he has not shut them up. And I believe he owns some interest there. Okay. So I think we should be very clear on this. It is not that he doesn't want politics. It is that he doesn't want politics which does not kowtow to what he wants.
But would you say, and on previous shows I've heard some of you tell me that there's been an obsession with politics at the expense of everything else about the country. Would you agree with that?
I think here you're looking at the media and what it is focusing on. And I don't think it is doing so because it loves politics, but it is doing so because that is where the citizens want to hear something. There is something wrong in the system that people are worried, people are concerned, and people want to see it resolved. If you run a newspaper today and there's a big political event and you decide to ignore it and run anything else, you will probably get 100% returns. That is a reality. Secondly, I had this very disturbing thing that the inauguration is everything. It is not. That is a simple inauguration. He gets a second term. Nobody is disputing that. Or if they are disputing that, that is within their right to dispute. But that does not mean that because the president is being inaugurated, nobody else has a right to do anything else
on the day.
To attend another function, to do whatever else they want to do, to go to work or not go to work, or do their own political initiatives. The constitution is not suspended because the president is being inaugurated.
Fair point. Let me move our conversation forward then. And to you all, what is the most pressing political issue before we move on to other matters that the president is going to have to deal with and resolve? Sir, you've got the mic.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I think the state of our union as a state and a nation is not strong. We have a lot of bitterness. The division is deeply entrenched. There is a lot of frustration, uncertainty, and whatever we as the populace are doing is presumptuous and maybe preemptive of what would come from the president on Tuesday. Probably we may not be talking about a divided nation from Tuesday, because the president might come up with a very good speech that will embrace every Kenyan. So as a nation, I think we should focus on the swearing in and what type of speech the president is going to give the country. And then we can now interrogate that as we move forward as a nation.
Okay, it's going to be critical in setting the tone.
In setting the tone
and
the agenda for the next 5 years.
All right, Madam.
Thank you, Anne. My name is Dr. Zedi Rob from Kenyatta University. I also come from Nandi County. I feel that after Tuesday, the president has a lot of work to do. Remember, right from August, Kenyans have not rested. We've been in and out of politics, and up to now, people are not even they're not even sure of what will happen next. So after Tuesday, the president has a lot of work. He needs to unite the Kenyans. He needs to unite the nation. There are people who are really affected, the youth, especially the boy child. I think he has a lot. He really needs to reach out to the boy child and see how we can help them, because they're always the casualties of campaign. Anytime there's a campaign, they are the ones who are used as tools of campaign, and they always suffer. After the campaigns, they're always left suffering. So I feel the president has a lot of work to do, and he cannot do it alone. He needs the whole nation. He needs all of us to work with him, right from the village, right from the grassroots, all the way upwards. We really need to work together if Kenya is supposed to come back to one. Thank you. Yeah.
There is, and you've talked about him, reaching out, and many people have said that over the last few weeks. But there is the question of how to do that honestly, significantly, and yet at the same time when, the country appears uncertain, to show some sort of firm, steady hand, have that sort of perhaps appeal or effect on the public that, things will be okay. It may be a rocky boat, but things will be okay. How do you balance the two? How should he reach out? You've got the mic, sir.
I think I'm a lover of language, and I love to go back to the root word of a certain understanding, like the word government. The Latin root word is gubernare mentis, which means the control or management of the collective mind. So the collective mind is formed by all of us, and all of us have images when we say words, like the word cat. You see the animal, you don't see the word. You see dog, So when I say the word government, I need to see the mind that it represents. So he will have a lot of work ahead of him, and all of us collectively, to resell the mind, the collective mind of this country. What makes us Kenyan? There are certain values, there are certain ideals and visions, and if we don't buy that vision, you will not want somebody to take you where you cannot see first. So I think part of the process will require sales and marketing to the people, and a buy-in from the people, that collective mind. Because if I'm not sold into this vision, I will not support it, and neither will I get my people or whoever is within me or who I represent to buy this vision. So it's a lot of vision building.
All right.
Yeah, regardless of who takes the presiding seat over that vision. Yeah.
And that, let's now discuss, the second term or the final term proper. You've talked about selling a vision, and for the president and for Jubilee, largely that means their manifesto. For others, it means just the vision that we can be a nation, even though we don't feel like one necessarily all the time. For you, because I believe you have a marketing background, is it, sir? What should he sell first? Is it infrastructure, we're going to build the roads, we're going to give you the hospitals and all of that, or is it time to sell something that is more heart than mind?
Thanks for that. I think from a marketing perspective, first you need to understand what people want. Because unless I understand what you want, what you need, you're the buyer. And I'm the one trying to create a product or a service that will appeal to your need. So it's going to be a lot of listening, but at the same time, guidance on the process. Because like right now, we have a process. We are politicking. Because again, that word is about what Professor said. It's discourse. So this discourse allows him to see where we are at in our minds. And then if he can understand that and he sees the collective mind, now you start painting a picture. Because by the time now we execute, we'll now execute as one unit. Because right now we may be executing as 2 or 4 different units, but the people who are going to see us as Ugandans or Tanzanians or the rest of the world, they will see one mind.
And I think that's a fair point. And I suppose in listening, not listening necessarily to your party, going beyond that to hear other, and he actually did this. Okay, to go beyond that. Miss, with the microphone at the back, we've heard from Jubilee insiders saying, you know, especially in the run-up to this election, that in the second term you're going to see a tough president, you know. None of this hanky-panky business that seems to be going on around the country where everybody is coming up, you know, with some opinion or other, or, you know, attacks on the presidency. Do you believe that what Kenya needs to see in the second term is a tougher talking president, a tougher image of the presidency, or something else?
I would say that a strategy needs to be put in place in as far as where we want to go as a nation. We are a people that seem to be very, very committed to politics, and it's primarily because we believe that our engagement in politics is beneficial to us as a people. That's why we see people give a lot of themselves towards this process, and when it doesn't go in their direction, then the need of them feeling disappointed is there. But I think the narrative that needs to come into place is the fact that if we build this nation together, then we have a stake into it, and that is something that has not been marketed, as you know, he was mentioning. And I think we need to, you know, continually play that discourse that if we put our hands in building this nation, especially in the area of economics and in the area of increasing the literacy of our people, then finally or ultimately at the end it will boomerang and be of benefit to us. We need to come to the place to understand that our continual engagement in politics, the way that we do, is not beneficial for us. We need to re-strategize, we need to regroup, and we need to rethink the direction of this nation. So I would say that what the president needs to, you know, bring to the forefront, and even when he comes, you know, in engagement with other parties or other political parties or other political players, is to continually play the narratives in the minds of Kenyans that it is time for us to build this nation so that each and every one of us can benefit from it.
And that doesn't sound to me like, you know, a tough strongman type of image.
No.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. The gentleman with the mic, I see all your hands. I'll come round to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that what the country is yearning for, beginning Tuesday, is to see whether Uhuruto 2 will be different from Uhuruto 1. Mm-hmm. In other words, what is going to change in the second term. And I think that the president has many options at his disposal. He only needs to look at our country's history and ask himself, at what point has this country had some kind of collective happiness? At what point have we been happy as a country? And in my opinion, I think this country is very easy to manage in terms of making it happy. There are moments when this country has been united,
right,
and had a collective happiness.
Name some, remind us.
For example, President Uhuru can learn from President Moi after the very divisive 1992 election. What does President Moi do? He finds a strategy of what he calls cooperation with Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And at that moment, the country begins to think as one. You don't have the kind of division you have today. And later on, I think he talks to Raila Odinga. President Moi talks to Raila Odinga, I think after the 1997 election. So the president needs to look at what are the issues this country is facing, and I can tell you that, in my opinion, these issues are as old as the country. Issues of disparity, economic disparity, issues of ethnic division, issues of gender imbalance, and all those issues. And a lot of these issues become strong in our country out of perception rather than reality. So a lot of Kenyans just have the perception that, for example, they are excluded from the country. It's just perception. And it's very easy to deal with that issue of perception, the way President Moi tried to deal with it. It's very easy to make this country feel that it is one by just working on people's perception. And I can tell you that I don't think, in my opinion, that economic development, infrastructure leads to national happiness. If that were the case, people in Kisumu would be very happy that they have an airport. They'll be very, very happy. But now people are talking about, you know, Kenya in the metaphor of a marriage, a cruel marriage. And I think David D has said the antidote is divorce. in my opinion, Anne, I don't think we are in a cruel marriage. Maybe what we are in is a polygamous marriage. And
a cruel marriage. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
A polygamous marriage.
Go ahead.
And maybe we should begin to learn from our ancestors and how they managed their polarity in terms of the polygamous backgrounds they were existing in, so that we can learn a trick or two from the akuku dangers of this world.
I hope you realize that all the men are smiling and the ladies are like,
and I intended to say,
finally,
either we are in a polygamous marriage or in a marriage where we have one lady and 43 husbands. How do you manage that kind of marriage? And a lot of Kenyans have managed that kind of situation. It's possible.
I don't even know what to say after that. I'm just going to look at Gadara. Oh, sorry. Thimba, you have the mic, Eric Thimba.
So, speaking about the legacy and realizing that, you know, since the 80s, we've had magnificent strategies for this nation. In fact, even I want to point to the Vision 2030 that was a huge thing that we talked about in during Kibaki's time, but there was no political will to be able to execute this vision. You know, time and time again, we've had politicians who've had and government officials who've created magnificent strategies, but no political will. I think that our president needs to put an end to the lawlessness within this nation in terms of the adherence to our constitution and the adherence to the rule of law. If you look at, for example, in the euphoria that you spoke about, I remember when Moi was removed from power in 2002 and how excited this whole country was. Why? Because there was this excitement around that corruption will come to an end, that lawlessness will come to an end. In fact, people were even arresting police officers who are corrupt. There was citizen arrests. People had a sense of euphoria about this nation once more that could only be rivaled from the time of independence. And the thing is this, is that unless we are able to tap into that, and in fact, if you remember, in President Kibaki's inauguration speech, he spoke explicitly about corruption. Now, if you fast forward to 2013, if you go and listen to Uhuru Kenyatta's speech, there was no mention of corruption. Yet, this is the thing that all of us talk about. If there's no single person here who does not sit down with their peers and friends, and part of the topic of discussion is corruption. And so, if we're going to be talking about a tough and tough president, it's not about a tough president who appears tough. It's that for us as a nation, finally we want to go back to that euphoria that we had, where we believe that we are truly a nation of laws. In fact, if you've seen in the last few weeks, you've been seeing the narrative that has been said by Jubilee, where all of a sudden there's this new thing where they're saying that we are a nation of laws and we are a nation who believes in the Constitution. Yet, for the last 5 years, that has not been true. And so if that is the new narrative, then it's time to no one cares about the infrastructure, right? We have great plans for this nation that can be executed. Go dust them off and execute these plans. I think it's time for the political will to do what it is that we want done. And one of the first things that we want done is an end to lawlessness.
Okay. You're a man of the law. I see your hands. I'm coming to you, gentlemen. Go ahead. Steve Ogola.
Thank you, Anne. Well, on Tuesday, the president will be dressed in fine statutory linen. He will then be allowed to walk into the inner sanctum of power to offer sacrifices at the altar of governance. He needs to remember that before he offers the sacrifices at the altar of governance to the benefit of the people of Kenya, that even as the good book, the Bible says, you must retrace your steps backwards first. Make peace with those that you've left behind. And if there was something that was wrong, correct it, then you can come back again, and then now begin to offer sacrifices, and the Lord shall receive those sacrifices. Now, what we must disinherit from the campaign period that began in May, and I don't think the president has suddenly forgotten about these challenges just because he's been elected and his election has been reaffirmed by the Supreme Court. He needs to remember that number one, maybe if I may have forgotten, number one, the lack of political decency, and find a way of dealing with that. You know, that was one of the key highlights. The second issue is, again, on the political class, thinking that they can operate within the law, outside the law, and what does it mean for a government that is now running, you get. And then number three, how then to make sure that there's a matching culture between what the Constitution has ordained and the reality, because there's a serious disjunction between the law as it is and the practice of that law. What is called as the transformative project of the Constitution needs a matching political culture and a matching moral persuasion. Do we really have a settled moral conviction as Kenyans that we should abide by the law, so that if our party leaders, our leaders generally, try to drive us away from what is known in the law, then we can say no to it? Or are we processing things through ethnic lenses? Because Kenyans, has been said, we are excessively ethnic, and we don't care what other people think. We don't care what the law says, as long as our leaders say it. In fact, jokes have been made that the Constitution was read for us by other people. Maybe the president must now reimagine the technique of governance. How to do this, first of all, is to reframe the question of inclusion. And for me as a lawyer, I'm unable to broaden the scope of inclusion without interrogating the minimum inclusion reforms that have been ordained in the Constitution and how that has been implemented. The law on inclusion necessarily means that the marginalized groups, women, persons with disabilities, we saw today in the news, the composition of the cabinet. There is a court order that requires the president to reconstitute cabinet to meet the 2/3 gender threshold in this term. There is also a pending outstanding judgment by the High Court requiring the parliament to reconstitute parliament to bring the 2/3 gender compliance into reality. Persons with disabilities, the marginalized communities, special interest groups, all these people, these are minimum requirements that we must meet. Then, on the other issue of inclusion, I think we must also begin to debate, is inclusion meaning the expansion of government? Because the reality is this, and you can't have a democracy that co-opts the opposition into government. I think that is our reality. We have to work with it, and we have to accept that even if you're doing amendments to the Constitution, it will be to mean
need to be outside of government.
People who are running for president could run for senator or MPs, so that maybe if they win, they remain at the Senate or they remain at the National Assembly, but you can't have a kind of approach that then co-opts the entire opposition into government. Democracy never works like that. If you have a problem with democracy, we can broaden the discussion, the other options of governance.
Fair enough, and I'll return to that, the other options of governance, and is democracy working? Because we have heard from groups like the church in terms of either strengthening the opposition, dignifying it. Others are talking about you've got to share some of these positions. So we hear you, but there are laws in place that need to be followed as a bare minimum. Sir and lady, I see your hands. I'll start with the gentleman.
Okay, my name is Kevin Kemadi Mweti. I'm from Governance Pillar Organization. And let me talk about President Kenyatta's second term, which I think will be the most difficult second terms any president has ever had in this country, because it's important to evaluate the background of his second term. It's in the background which we have a united opposition, an opposition which has remained united since 2013. So it has tested through the murky waters of being the opposition side, and they are very committed to actually get into government. From that background, we can also be able to see that the election of 26th October was a very controversial election, and that actually 24 counties, about 24 counties of this country never achieved a turnout of not above 10%. That tells you that it has become personal for the voters. You can imagine for the 4 counties which never had any election, and you telling them that they have in a president doesn't make sense to them. There's someone who said that inclusion is a matter of perception, but inclusion is not I think it's a feeling, it's not a perception. People feel they don't feel included in government or in governance matters because they've been totally left out, and they can actually see that what do you mean by totally left out? In what way? Totally left out in this sense that I've just given an example of the 26th election. What do you say of a president who actually admits to the people that there is nothing wrong with not turning up to vote? What we lack in this country is leaders who are statesmen. A statesman is someone who, for the interest of the unity of a nation, they are ready to set aside to set aside their offices and deal with that unity first, not get in the office then trying to deal with the unity. My point here is that as a country we've really been focused on development politics, what we've been called development politics, for that presidents say that in Kirinyaga today. And this development politics is normally focused on the economic part of development, forgetting that there is also the social development, there is the political development. This takes me to the identitarian kind of politics that we need to focus as a nation. Every time we've been led to identitarian politics where the political power is based on the people's interest and their social groups that they relate with, we are always trying to be told that this is tribalism, this is wrong. But actually, identitarian politics is what will heal this nation, because a lot of suggestions that are being given here about narratives to sell, about what to focus on, about development, let me tell you, there are places in this country where President Kenyatta can change their lives 100%, but these people not turn up to vote. We have to interrogate. We will not never even consider voting him, because we need to interrogate why is it that there are people who follow maybe the opposition leader Raila Odinga, because there are certain interests that he represents that they only see. So we have in a lot of communities which have been marginalized in the past, they have coalesced around the opposition leader Raila Odinga such that they do not feel included in a government which does not represent the kind of interest that Odinga represents.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
I have to open it up now to everybody else as well. I thank you, and I think we'll return to that when talking about the reform agenda that the opposition is seen to really, own. I don't want you to go ahead and comment on it because, sir, I have to take other views. We'll return to where you've left us on that cliffhanger. Miss
Samantha Mwangi, I wish I shared that sense of Tuesday waiting to hear what he has to say, because to me, he's still the president. I'm not waiting for Tuesday for him to convince me that he's going to be that stand, or he's going to, ensure that, the laws have been followed or all these things, because he had the chance to do that now. So I'm not looking at Tuesday and waiting for it to seem like, oh yes, a Messiah has come to save us from all these injustices. The president had the opportunity to even demonstrate that now. He would have even sold that to us so that we can even vote for him. I think, for me, I don't agree with that. Again, people are speaking. The protests are people speaking. People are talking about the injustices that they're facing day to day. So it's not, if he listens, again, I'm not sharing the excitement for Tuesday, but I have an issue with the fact that we're deeply divided, and we're here looking at Tuesday as a day when everything is going to be washed away. I don't agree. I don't agree with that narrative, because it's important for all of us, and even the president going forward, to ensure that we feel like we're one. And for him, it has to be with cracking the whip. So he cannot be nice going forward. Fine.
What would you like him to crack the whip on?
Can we have some people arrested? Can people be in jail? Can we see that? Because I'm sick and tired of, we're going to sort it out, or I don't know. It's too nice. I don't want someone who's, because people are doing injustices. I mean, look at what IBC did for us. How are people not in jail? That's just where my mind is at. We need to see that the law is being followed, and we're not nice about it, because people are suffering injustices, and it's just not fair.
Okay, so and you and Thimbe sitting next to you, both of you talking about the need for a tough presidency is very much in ensuring justice. You need to be tough on justice. Fair point. Patrick Gadara, who's very much at home here. Karibu nyumbani, Patrick, go ahead.
Sana.
Okay.
But I've got to say one thing. I think the whole discussion is again predicated on a false basis. For as long as you have a state that's structured the way that it is, you're appealing to your politicians to try and be nice or unite people. It's not going to work. There is nowhere in the world, where if you sit and you depend on the goodwill of politicians, or actually I should say that there are very few places in the world where the goodwill of politicians is sufficient to deliver goods to the public. What you really need is accountability, and the state you have today actually mitigates against you holding him to account, and that's why you have problems. When people speak about politics, we should get away from politics. Politics is the stuff of democracy. If you want a democracy, you've got to live with the politics. Our problem is our politics is not about our issues. It's about Raila's issues, it's about Kenyatta's issues. And they have convinced us that that's what we should fight about. You know, let's fight about who runs the country, not how the country is run. You know? And I think until we fundamentally understand that this is a function of how our state is structured, that it was built for one purpose. It was created by the colonialists to take money and resources away from you and feed it up to the people at the top. It does that very well. You know, the state is not broken. You know, it does that extremely well. But once we realize that, then we can say, well then, what state do we want? And let's have that discussion. I think on Tuesday, what I would really want us to first remember is we had another inauguration speech in 2013. Please go look at it. Your president said that he's going to work for a permanent peace. Not this peace that's always, every 5 years, it's being disrupted. Well, does anybody here think he did that? So why would you imagine that he's going to promise, whatever he promises you on Tuesday is going to do? He won't do it for as long as you can't hold him to account when he doesn't. You know? And I think that, just to finish off, that when if we stop focusing on what they are telling us, stop looking for leaders, you know, these are people we are giving jobs. You know, for me, it's not about getting a leader. You know, it's about getting somebody who does a particular job, and we hold him to account when he doesn't do that job. And it doesn't matter whether you support Jubilee or NASA. Does your sewage work? You know, is your road built? Those are the things you hold them to account on, whether the system you have works for you. You know, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't matter on what side of the divide he is. You know, he is a president, he has a job. If he's not doing that job, tell him to go away, give that job to somebody else.
Okay. Miss, I'd like you to pick up on that, but also let's return to the cliffhanger that the gentleman left us off in terms of, you know, why are certain people rallying behind the opposition, and perhaps in figuring that out, then you can figure out what is the unanswered need. Is that a fair comment? Sure. Okay, fair enough. So can the president claim the reform agenda? Can he somehow embody that and be the champion of it?
Wanjari Nderu.
Go ahead.
Honestly, personally, I don't think he can. I think he lost that opportunity in the last 5 years that he has been in power. Our constitution is very clear. The preamble actually just begins with we, the people. Sovereign power belongs to the people. It is our responsibility as patriotic citizens to hold these people to account. They are not there to serve themselves, they should be there to serve us. When we look at even just this corruption that we have in this country, we have data showing that 600 billion is getting lost annually through corruption. That's a third of our budget. And this is coming from official sources themselves. We have the president saying, munataka nifanye nini? Already when you just admit to the people of Kenya, you are helpless. How am I supposed to be confident as a Kenyan that the next 5 years I'm supposed to expect something different? I do not have that faith. What he's going to do on Tuesday is read a piece of paper written to him by somebody in his office, and he'll come and he will read, maybe he'll make a few off-the-cuff remarks. But have we addressed the reasons why Kenya is where it is today? Have we addressed the reasons why there's a section of this country that feels left out? We haven't. We had a perfect opportunity actually as a country with this election season to change elections forever. Some of those basic things that, these basic changes that IBC, for instance, would have done, would have ensured in 2022, we are not here. But 2022, we will still be here. We will have people in the streets, we will have people shot dead by police, and it is very, very obvious to the entire country that it is ethnic profiling taking place. We have to be real about that. We have seen rioters in Githurai, for instance, burning tires, but they're being escorted by police. They actually are being guarded by police to riot. You have the same in Kisumu. live bullets. On Saturday, a lady died cooking her ugali in her house in Kibera. She was not in the street. The bullets went through her iron sheet house.
And for the benefit of my audience, yes, the statistics and the instances you're referring to, because you do work in the rights yes, movement at the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Yes. Those are things that you have documented as a yes, commission, I should say. So based on what you have said in terms of his inability to reclaim a reform agenda because he had the time to be a reformist leader, if you like, in the first term, we have heard repeatedly our audience talk about the fact that we need a national dialogue. He's the president. One would expect that he should be the first one to lead that national dialogue. Do you see that as something that would work? Would that satisfy you, him coming and saying, you know, my first order of business is to hear the people and to bring them together for dialogue? Or are you saying that he isn't the figure who can champion that as well?
For me, it's both. What do we mean by national dialogue? Is it Raila and Uhuru sitting in a room and discussing and saying who is going to get what positions? Mm-hmm. What does that do for me as a Kenyan? We are a country that treats our issues and puts them under the carpet by coming up with commissions of inquiries, you know, to appease the people. If national dialogue is to take place, if cohesion is to take place, where are all these recommendations that were done? TGRC report is out there. Mm-hmm. Akiwumi report is out there. Mm. The land report, Ndongora land report is there. Mm. We are not touching that because the people who are mentioned in these reports mm-hmm, are the people in power. Mm-hmm. So we cannot pretend to claim that you can bring cohesion and national inclusivity when we are not addressing the problems that have brought us where we are today.
And the solutions you're saying that we already found?
Yes, we have those solutions. Okay. They're just in booklets and
collecting dust somewhere.
Collecting dust in offices.
Yeah. Mark?
You know, one of the beauties about democracy today is we no longer marry our leaders, we actually date them. We date them for 5-year periods and we get to choose whether we dump them or not. When we marry them for too long like Mugabe, we can all tell what happened. Okay. And therefore, using that same analogy, since we've discovered that this is not a marriage, what do you do when someone takes the person you like on a date? You've got two options. Number one, you need to describe how bad that person is that they're on a date with. Or number two, you can showcase how good you are. Holding a parallel date will not help your cause. Okay? Now when you understand that the job the job of building democracy is building a better picture for this spouse called a country. That's how democracy works. That the person coming in next is promising you better than the last person. Now to touch on inclusivity, Matiang'i really helped us with inclusivity. Because when the results came out in record time, they did not come out fast in Kisii. They came out everywhere. Now, inclusivity is not about people. Let's not say that these people have been nepotistic and given opportunities to their people, so let's bring our person so he can be nepotistic and give opportunities to our people. That's not the debate. The debate is how can we set an agenda that is profitable to me, so much so that I'm not looking at the tribe, color, nationality, tongue of the person who's sitting in that high office. And this is the problem. The problem is, and this is the issue, that we have a country. For you to be near power, you've got to surrender your brain. It is almost as if the higher you get to being able to influence the nation is the more you surrender your IQ so that your opinions are given to you. And the problem with this situation is this, that we have a leadership that refuses to listen to the common man. And that's the problem. You are my employee. That's how it works. I need to tell you what I want. And the thing is this, we need to get to a point where you can be in NASA and disagree with Raila and not be called a betrayer. You need to be in Jubilee and disagree with Jubilee and not be seen as a mole. When we get to that point where truth can be treated as truth and not a rebellion and not insubordination against your leader, that's the point where the nation can now bring people to account. Just because I disagree with you does not mean I don't like you. So we need space actually in this country, not to voice our opinions only, but to be your friend and disagree with you.
All right, we're out of time, but you know, when you were talking about the parallel date, Prof was like, parallel date, yes. That's what I'm going to do. Prof, I'm kidding. Okay, we're just about to wind up, and I want us to just reflect on the election period that we've just concluded. By the way, a lot of people in the audience are smiling about the parallel date. For the benefit of my viewers, it's just that you're not seeing them. Finally, there are those who have said that, you know, democracy in Kenya was an experiment and is a failed experiment. In fact, NASA has talked about that quite categorically, you know, with the views like that of Gavara, that really there is a system that predisposes us to act the way we are. It doesn't matter on your benevolence, etc. I'm just wondering about your thoughts. It has, you know, coming at the end of this process, there's supposed to be somebody who wins and somebody who doesn't. We should all get on with it. Do you feel that democracy has failed us, sir, with the mic?
My name is Bonnie Lumumba. On my side, I think first and foremost, we need to first describe what is democracy. Like, if it's a battle of the winner and the loser, what's the criteria of the winner? Like, what are the marks? What are the card marks? Like, if you're winning, what does it take for you to win? And
more votes. Somebody will respond and say more votes. It takes more votes. Majority wins.
So if it's all about more votes, let's talk about the elections of the 26th. You know, like someone who's like, like 26 counties, which you say less than 10% haven't voted. So look at all those people, like these other 26, 90%. Are you going to call yourself their president? Or are you president of a certain section? And, you know, going back to the whole talk of secession, you know, like if you call yourself the man of the house, and then there's the talks of a parallel date, that thing needs to scare you. You know, you need to get chills and you're like, what is so wrong about me? You know, but if you go ahead and thump your chest, and say like, I did it, you know, that's wrong. So what I can say right now is, a writer wrote and said, it's so hard to get a second chance to do a first impression. And it's not about Uhuru who got the second chance, it's the Kenyans. And you know, since time memorial, look at it, we've all been blowing our second chance. You know, like, you get the opportunity to vote in the right guy. Guess what you do when 5 years come? Like, my guy, I have to get this guy, I have to get him in power so that I can get rich too. So there's that worship of people to the point where even you by yourself forget that you can stand and be a leader. You have the influence within yourself, because someone said, a writer wrote and said, leadership is influence. You as the influence, you go and rally your guys to support someone with less influence than you, and you call him a leader. I guess that's the problem where we have.
So democracy for you, we're not doing it right.
Like, we as Kenyans don't understand democracy. We have to have a re-education of democracy within ourselves, because maybe the democracy within us is what this cheap politics we see is what we call leadership. When the real leaders are somewhere in the houses, they are hidden, they can't stand and say they're leaders. So I guess it's something that we need to reevaluate, all of us as Kenyans. It's not about politics.
Charles, Charles Sophia.
Wow. You know what is interesting about Kenya as a whole is that we each have our own terms for what we think something is. And then what my term is versus what your term is becomes a problem. Because as it is as a nation right now, we need to redefine just about every term we're using, because Kenya is a master of abusing terms. You see, in our mind, when you say leader in Kenya, what are you saying? Today, if we take any of the people we are calling leaders and took them through the litmus test of leadership, we'd ask, what are they doing there? So this is our problem number one. Because when you already have that, listen, once you send the cat to look after the milk, the case is closed. You're not going to blame the cat for being natural. It's just going to be itself. I mean, this is where we are at. So we are picking the same crazy guys, sending them in and then saying, what are you going to fix this time? Very clearly, himself. What else is there to fix? I think Kenyans, we need to start upgrading our intellect, because the politicians know and believe we're stupid, and they love it. There's no intent to change anything. That's why they'll stand bold. I mean, in this electioneering period, we've had intelligent people say stupid things with a straight face and expect you to believe it. And they say it like it's gospel truth, and this is what it is, and this is how it is. And then everybody knows what is in the other person's mind. Everybody in Jubilee knows what Raila is thinking. And everybody in NASA knows exactly what Jubilee is thinking. So the question is, why are we even wasting time asking the question? If I was a president, on Tuesday, the big question is very simple. You failed the first exam.
Wow.
You have a new paper to sit. How are you going to sit this paper? What are you going to do to prepare on this paper? Because 5 years is very short. The way things are going, we're going to be electioneering for 4 years. So it's going to be a very short process. The question is, what is it that makes NRM an effect? What can you do as the president? Listen, after 2013, with all the noise, within 6 months he was the darling of the nation. He was the most popular person in the nation, irrelevant by which side you came from. Can he recapture that? That's the question. What does he need to do? Because at that time, he had it in his hands. If corruption didn't rear its head, there would have been no debate in 2017. That's a reality. So he has this one opportunity to sit and ask, is there a legitimate thing that I can do that makes the opposition irrelevant?
Wow.
Is there something I can do that makes everybody say we don't need them because you've fixed it? That should be the challenge.
Resitting the exam. It wasn't, the election wasn't the exam.
No.
The exam is how you govern.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so I have so many hands that are up. Oh dear me. What shall I do? Because we're absolutely out of time. Director, I'm just going to ask you indulgence for 1 minute or so to get final views very quickly. I saw the gentleman with the hand, Gadara with the hand, and Prof obviously have a oh dear, Masharia Gaido's hand is up as well, would you believe? Sir, really, it is 1 minute so that I can get as many closing views.
Thank you. And I think that, in my opinion, democracy has not failed in Kenya. What has happened is that our leadership has abused our democratic processes. What the country needs is to have a movement within ordinary citizens that agitates for a redefinition of our national values in such a manner that we provide some kind of hygiene in the way we do our political business. In my opinion, the solution should begin with agitation for the full implementation of Chapter 6 of our Constitution.
Wow, the neutered one, leadership and integrity. So, quickly.
The other day, President Uhuru went to visit Mzee Moi. And I'd like to just imagine how that conversation went. I'd imagine him and told him, Mzee, I'm in trouble. People are rioting on the streets. I want to take office, but I don't have peace. Allah is not giving me peace. Please show me how you dealt with this guy, because my people are telling me that you're the one who knows how to fix things. You know what Moi would have told him? Go back to November 1991. I was in the same situation. My the people were rioting on the streets, were demanding multi-party. They did not understand that Kanoni Mama na Baba. My sycophants, Kina Sharif Nazir, Chotara, all those characters were telling me, use the army, shoot the people who are rioting, detain their leaders, cut off their whatever you can cut off, and so on. But I sat back and I thought, maybe I am the problem, not them.
Wow.
If I don't accept change, change will change me, or I'll be swept out by the wind. Without warning, without even telling his closest sycophants, Moi accepted multi-party. And he would have told Uhuru, do the same thing. Acknowledge that there is a problem. Ignore those who are telling you to go and shoot people. Take office and then initiate the process of national healing and reconciliation. As simple as that.
And don't tell them. Just go ahead and do it very quickly.
Just on the question of whether democracy has failed, it hasn't. The fact is, democracy has not been tried. No, it's the truth. Democracy is not about electing leaders. That's one of the issues we have. Democracy is about people ruling themselves. And that's not what we have tried. What we have tried is to get people, others, who we call leaders, to rule us. Let's try one thing. Let's just try to rule ourselves. Let's hold our people to account. The people who were there, who were in charge, hold them to account. As she was saying, set the agenda for yourselves. You decide, not what they tell you matters, it's what you say matters, what you think, the priorities you want. So if we try that, then we'll actually be trying democracy, and I think we'll probably have a better country for it.
Ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I tend to agree with him. Sometimes it's the people to be blamed. They are the ones who go to the ballot box, they vote in these leaders. They don't hold them to account for what they have done for them. So sometimes we are the cause of our own mistakes because we vote them in. After that, we sit back and start complaining. So I think Kenyans should know the powers that they have in their hands. They know that they should know that they are the ones who have the powers to choose their leaders.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Briefly, sir.
Very briefly. Thank you, Anne. I think the problem in Kenya is not whether we have a democracy or whether we are democratic or whether our democracy has been tested. The problem is also not with the constitution. I think the problem in Kenya is constitutionalism. And now it comes in with the reform agenda. The president still has an opportunity to redeem himself, I believe. Grab the reform agenda from the opposition and lead it and move the nation forward.
All right. Thank you. Miss, you'll have the last word.
All right. I'll make this really quick. I believe in the power of one. You know what's ailing you where you are. You have neighbors, you have friends. Figure out which government body or institution needs to address that problem. You are the people, you know the pain, you have the power. Use it. Period.
Prof.
Yes.
What a show.
Very interesting discussions. I just want to say two, three things quickly in succession. Somebody has said that President Uhuru Kenyatta failed the first test. So did he apply, when he applied for the second test, what were the conditions? Why did you vote him in if he had failed the first test and without any conditions? That's the first question. The second question is that this frivolous argument that politics should be kept off, people should keep off politics. I agree with Patrick Gathara. This is naive. Politics runs the world. Economists can plan, bring models of how resources can be shared. It is the politicians who determine. It is politics that determines how resources of the world are shared. So that is a frivolous argument. Then third, that I want to talk about is that the president is definitely going to be sworn in. There are two things he should do, and he should just put clearly. The first thing, let him pick the Constitution and read Article 10. And read it to everybody that is going to work with him. Then ask the people who might be, moved from the former government to this government, that if you are a minister, out of 100%, the national values and the principles of governance, how much did you achieve? How many marks can you give yourself? And he should also ask them to grade the president. How many marks did he get out of 100 for only Article 10 of the Constitution? And then secret ballot, I can offer to be the returning officer. But and then we see that from there he can get immediate feedback. And then when he gets immediate feedback, that's okay. Then lastly, what the president should do, is to just ignore the opposition, but pick their message. There is this argument that everybody's talking about these things, and there is this flawed thinking in Jubilee that Raila Odinga is one person. And they keep on talking about it dismissively. I beg our citizens in Jubilee to stop thinking like that. That is political naivety of the highest order. Look at the grievances the messenger is bringing. Address those grievances. And because I'm the last person to speak, I want to give credit to my brother Gathara. We need to reimagine the state. I think the biggest legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta is this. This state has failed. And we must reimagine it with the view to uniting the country and make sure that we move it away from the colonial paradigm that it was and make it more relevant to us. It cannot, this state as currently constituted cannot address corruption. It cannot, in fact, begin to address the issue of ethnicity. this is a place where people go. It is the most attractive mistress or most handsome person, but it is the one that determines the use, distribution of resources and power, and it is a mistress or a handsome person that everybody wants to own. So every election, the contest is about owning this state and domesticating it. We must stop that habit. I think the president is listening, and I hope the president will change the way he initiates his governance structures so that in 2022 or in a year's time, as my brother put it, we smile. And we would like to see that happen very soon before we lose our country. I want to thank you all for your views. You've been a really great audience. I feel so sorry that I can't come round for more final views, but I would love to host each one of you again. Thank you for being so bold and so candid about your positions. I believe that's how we move Kenya forward, by hearing each other out and figuring out the way forward together. Prof, so many romantic connotations through the show. What was going on with these people? It's during a polygamous marriage. You're talking about parallel dating. Yes. Goodness. Yes. This is part of the spice. Our politics has been so dry, so we want to put in something. There you are. Yes. That's our time. Thanks for watching tonight. God bless. God bless Kenya. Bye-bye.